Hey folks, my name's Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of St. Margaret of Scotland that sits on the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, Gwe. This morning, I watched the body cam footage from the Minneapolis police when they rushed into Amir Locke's home, into his apartment, and shot him 9-10 seconds later. I watched as they unlocked the door, and I watched as they dispersed into the apartment, and one fellow went into the kitchen, and one fellow went over into the living room, and two guys went forward, and one fella kicked the couch that Amir was sleeping on, and then bang. Shot 3 times. What I'm about to say, I mean no disrespect by this. I was shocked when I watched it. I didn't fully comprehend how something like that could happen in 9 seconds. And so my brain sort of, I think it went to a place that it, went into those memories where something did make sense. And what I thought about were all those television shows and all those movies that show soldiers, special forces operators and spies and police officers practice clearing a room, clearing a house. Where they enter and there's one behind the other and they're doing their thing and they're yelling, clear, clear, clear. And then all of a sudden, pop, out jumps this cartoon cutout of a grandma carrying groceries or a little girl reading a book or a thug pointing a gun. And in a split second, the police officer has to decide, or the soldier has to decide what they're going to do about that cardboard cutout that just jumped out in front of them. They have to make a split-second decision of whether or not they'll shoot it or let it be. Amir Locke didn't jump out at them. He was woken from a deep sleep fairly violently. And I can only imagine the confusion and the fog that his mind would have been stuck in, trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this very moment. What is happening? It's over. Now, I'm not saying the police only saw a cardboard cutout. I'm not saying they only saw an image jumping out, holding a gun. I'm not here to adjudicate how this whole thing went down. I'm not here to make a judgment on it. What I'm here to say is my fear is that when they entered that apartment, all they were thinking about was the possibility of encountering an object and not the possibility of encountering a human being. And when they went in there, they were thinking about an object jumping out at them, an object threatening them. And that's what they were prepared for. They were simply worried that an object may try to harm them, may try to avoid them. A criminal. Somebody who's a danger. That they weren't thinking, we're about to encounter a human being who won't know what's happening for the first 2 or 3 minutes. We're about to encounter a human being who, at 6:48 in the morning, is probably deep asleep. We're about to encounter a human being who, for that first minute or so, isn't going to understand who it is that has invaded their home. They weren't thinking they were about to encounter a human being with a mother and a father and a family and friends. A human being with a life. A lot of the things that I see, a lot of the stuff that I've been consuming lately or watching lately, it strikes me that the people in those videos, the people in the news, one of the chief sins that they are committing is that they are failing to see the people around them as human beings, and they're simply seeing them as an object of some description, an object to be labeled. They're not seeing the man at Walmart, they're seeing the thief who's looking for their next prize. They're not seeing the person waiting on them at the counter. They're seeing somebody that owes them something, somebody that should be giving them what they are entitled to. Some of these things we consume. Some of the media we consume, I think what we are actually seeing is the consequences, what happens when we as a society, not just as individuals, but we as a society either lose the ability or have never had the capability of seeing the people around us as children of God, just like us, as people created and formed in the image of God. I think when we see these Karens and these Kens and these acts of aggression and disproportionate use of power, I think we're seeing what happens when we fail to see that we are surrounded by other human beings and instead just simply see everyone around us as an object to be dealt with. But if we are able to practice seeing one another as actual flesh and blood human beings, people who have family, people who have friends, people who will be missed, people who are loved and who love. If we are able to see everyone around us as the flesh and blood embodiment of God's extension out into the world around us and into our world, and this goes beyond just human beings, but if we can see everything around us as an extension of God, we're much more likely to treat them as we want to be treated. When we can see that everyone and everything is an extension of God, that they are children of God, that they are part of God's creation, that they are loved and precious within God's creation, then we are able to show things and to give things like mercy and compassion and sympathy. We are more likely to have, actually not even more likely, it's the only way for us to even have the desire to connect with somebody empathetically, to understand who they are and where they come from, to dive deep into their life, to see them not only for the label that they wear, but to see them for who they could be, to see where they come from. When we are able to see everyone and everything around us instead of just as objects to be dealt with, but rather as people, that we can be people and things that we can build relationship with. That's when we can truly begin living the life that Jesus espoused us to live. That's when we can truly begin loving our neighbors as ourselves, truly begin loving our community, giving to our community. Objects aren't missed. Objects aren't thought about when they're missing from a Christmas dinner. People are. Humans are. Creatures created, formed in the image of God. They're missed. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that you and I will take on the practice of seeing the humanity in every person we encounter, that we would take on the practice of trying to see the light of God in everyone and in everything that we come in contact with. In this way we can begin being the Christians, the people following Christ that Jesus asks us to be. Amen. Demultus.